Once upon a time, there were two students who were working together on a school project. They were given 2 weeks to work on the project before it had to be completed. The first student went to work immediately. For 2 weeks, he studied, researched, wrote paragraphs, and worked hard to do well on the project. The second student played video games, watched movies, and hung out with friends. He lazed around for 2 weeks, doing none of his work. The day before the project had to be completed, the second student said to his friend, "I haven't done any of the work. I'm so screwed." His friend said, "Just copy and paste something from the internet. The teacher's too dumb to notice anyways." That'll work. The student copied and pasted all of their work from the internet and put it onto the project. When the good student saw this, his friend said, "Who put all that terrible work in your project?" The lazy student did this. His friend told him, "Shouldn't you remove all the bad work?" The good student replied, "No, we will let the presentation speak for itself." The next day, they presented. The teacher saw that half of the project was not original work, and that it was in fact plagiarized by the lazy student. So, the teacher gave the student that plagiarized all their work an F, and for the student who put in lots of effort into their part of the project was rewarded with an A.
So, now that you just watched that little video, I bet you're wondering, what did I just witness? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you exactly what you just witnessed. What you have just witnessed was a modernization of the parable of the weeds.
The parable of the weeds went a little something like this.
Jesus told another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed into his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weed among the wheat, and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weed also appeared. The owner's servant came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weed come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servant asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you're pulling up the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until harvest. At the time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned. Then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn."
The parable of the weeds is filled with many good analogies. For example, the field represents the world, and the wheat represents the good. The weeds represent the bad, and they are planted by the enemy, the devil. When the harvest time comes, death, the harvesters, the angels, come to reap the souls of the good and the bad, the weeds and the wheat. When the weeds are collected, they are put in a pile and burned, representing hell. When the wheat is collected, it is stored in a barn, representing heaven. This shows just how well this parable uses the analogies to symbolize our life on earth and how it determines our life in heaven.
In the parable of the weeds, there are many forms of symbolism. First off, the project represents the world, where the good student represents the good people in the world, and the bad student represents the bad people in the world. The student who influenced the bad student represents the devil, and the student who notified the good student about the plagiarism represents the farm workers. The teacher represents the angels, and the due date for the project represents harvesting time, death. Getting an A on the project represents going to heaven, and getting an F on the project represents going to hell.